Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the core system design decisions that keep massive applications from crashing under immense pressure. We're talking about how platforms like Medium or Substack can handle millions of reads a day without absolutely melting down. And the secret isn't some magical, ultra-expensive scaling tool. It's actually a small, specific set of foundational design decisions that every backend engineer really needs to understand. Let's dive in.
Picture this. It's 9 a.m. on a Monday. A celebrity writer publishes a highly anticipated post, and within 60 seconds, that single URL is getting hammered with 200,000 concurrent requests from all across the globe. And behind that URL sits a database row of, maybe 4 kilobytes?
If every single one of those requests slams directly into a naive database, your system cascades into a complete platform collapse. The database connection pool exhausts its max connections instantly, rejecting everything else, your CPU spikes, replication lag goes through the roof, and your entire platform slows to an absolute crawl, even for users who don't care at all about that celebrity. Applying our systems thinking framework, we always have to ask, how will this fail? Well, this is exactly the default failure mode, and it's exactly what we are going to fix today.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. 1. Schema design and storage. 2. The caching tiers. 3. Surviving the Stampede. And 4. The system synthesis.
Let's start right at the foundation with Part 1, Schema design and storage.
Take a look at this one-to-many normalized relationship between the users and blogs tables. We are strictly using integer IDs for our primary and foreign keys here. No emails, no usernames, nothing that might change over time. Integers are tiny, they are blazing fast to index, and most importantly, they're immutable. By separating the user data from the blog data, we're establishing a single source of truth. So, if a user changes their display name, we don't have to go back and update thousands of their blog posts. We completely avoid update anomalies.
Now notice that isDeleted Boolean flag on the blogs table. When a user deletes a post, we aren't actually executing a hard delete from blog statement. Instead, we use a soft delete. We just flip that Boolean flag to true, and then we modify all the read queries in our codebase to filter for where isDeleted equals false. So logically, the row is gone for the user, but physically, it's still sitting right there in the database. You might be thinking soft deletes are just for undoing user mistakes or keeping audit trails, which, don't get me wrong, is absolutely crucial. But here's the real kicker. They actually save massive B-tree index rebalancing costs in the database engine during high write volumes. See, relational databases use B-trees for their indexes. A hard delete on an index table is incredibly expensive. Pages might underflow, forcing the tree to rebalance, and that penalty cascades across every single index on that table. A soft delete, though, it's just a super cheap update to a Boolean column that completely bypasses all that heavy index restructuring.
But we really have to look deeper at the storage internals. Databases like Postgres and MySQL load entire 8-kilobyte pages off the disk at once. Because of that, we have to choose our column types really carefully to avoid something called read amplification. Even if your query is just select ID name, the database still pulls the entire heavy row off the disk into memory. That's exactly why we use a 4-byte int for timestamps to save space, and why we define the blog body as text instead of varchar. Text is often stored off-page, leaving just a tiny pointer in the main row. This keeps your hot path metadata queries blindingly fast, and you only pay that heavy I/O cost when the full body is actually requested.
Moving right along to Part 2, the caching tiers. At its core, a cache is essentially just a glorified hash table with an eviction policy. For a heavily read-optimized platform like ours, we're relying on the cache-aside pattern. It does exactly what it sounds like. The application checks the cache first. If there's a miss, it lazily falls back to the database, grabs the data, and then populates the cache for any future reads. When you combine this with write-through invalidation, meaning anytime you update a post, it immediately blows away the old cache key, you've got the rock-solid industry-standard setup. And this brilliantly highlights why we need CDNs. Look, even if you have the fastest application cache in the world, the speed of light is still finite. A round trip from a user in Tokyo to an origin server in Virginia takes 150 milliseconds, period. The only way to give that Tokyo user crisp 50 millisecond latency is to physically put a cache directly in Tokyo. A CDN caches those static, fully rendered responses right at the edge of the network, which drastically reduces the load on your origin servers.
Okay, Part 3, Surviving the Stampede. This is where things get really intense.
Because caching alone actually has a hidden flaw. Think back to our systems thinking framework. How will this fail?
When that celebrity post drops and the cache is totally cold, or maybe the key just naturally expired, what actually happens when 20,000 requests miss the cache in the exact same second?
Boom, you get a cache stampede. You might also hear it called the thundering herd or the dogpile effect. Every single one of those 20,000 concurrent requests checks the cache, gets a miss, and then turns around and fires the exact same query against the database. The DB tries to execute the exact same disk I/O 20,000 times simultaneously. Your CPU spikes, memory is exhausted, and your system is instantly dead. The scariest part? This is an emergent failure. A standard single-threaded load test will literally never catch this.
So, how do we actually survive this? We use a brilliant pattern called request coalescing. If you write in Go, you probably know this as the single flight package. It uses a concurrent map tied to a semaphore lock. When 20,000 requests miss the cache for the exact same blog ID, only the first request acquires the lock and becomes the designated worker that queries the database. The other 19,999 requests, they do not hit the DB. Instead, they just wait in memory on that semaphore. When the worker finishes, it instantly broadcasts the exact same result to all the waiting requests. 20,000 requests become exactly one database query. Honestly, this pattern is what separates amateur backends from true production-grade engineering.
Finally, part 4, the system synthesis. Let's pull it all together.
By combining all these strategies, we've basically constructed 5 distinct layers of caching. You've got the browser cache on the user's local machine, the CDN at the network edge, Redis sitting at the application layer, the database's own in-memory buffer pool, and finally the operating system's page cache. At every single level of this stack, we are deliberately exchanging memory for compute and I/O to absolutely crush latency.
Then we add in our 3 layers of Stampede protection. We've got in-process single-flight coalescing, potentially distributed shared locks for those extreme platform-wide hotkeys, and stale while revalidate patterns that asynchronously refresh data in the background. Combine all of that, and we've built a platform that simply will not buckle under a viral load.
Which really brings us to the ultimate principal engineer mindset. There are no magical best practices out there that just apply everywhere. Every single choice we discussed today trades memory for compute, or trades bytes for latency, or trades eventual consistency for raw throughput. You have to be able to justify these trade-offs based on your specific traffic patterns and your unique service level objectives.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. When you sit down to architect your next massive platform, which of these structural trade-offs will you choose to make sure your system survives its biggest traffic spike? Thanks for hanging out with me on this deep dive into system design. Keep building, and I'll catch you next time.